So, when you hear the word disaster, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably a massive earthquake, right? Or maybe a huge hurricane. We tend to think of these things as these unstoppable forces of nature. But today, we're going to dig into what really makes a disaster. And believe it or not, there's actually a formula to it. So let's kick things off with a big question, one that kind of challenges what a lot of us just assume. Are disasters really natural? Are they just random acts of God? Or is there something more going on here? Something we can actually understand and, maybe more importantly, do something about? This quote right here, it just nails it. Think about it. A massive earthquake that happens in the middle of an empty desert, well, that's just a cool geological event. It only becomes a disaster when our homes and our lives are in its path. So at the end of the day, disasters are fundamentally about us. They're about people. Okay, so if a disaster isn't just the event itself, then what is it? To really get to the bottom of that, we need to unpack this idea of risk. See, experts use a specific formula to figure it out, and we're going to break it down piece by piece. All right, the very first ingredient in our formula is the hazard. You can kind of think of this as the trigger. It's the thing with the potential to cause harm. The ground shaking from an earthquake, the intense wind from a hurricane, or even a chemical spill from a factory. By itself, it's a physical thing happening, but it isn't a disaster. Not yet. Next up, we have exposure. This is all about the who or the what that's in the hazard's way. Is there a big, bustling city built right on top of a fault line? Are there towns all along the coast where a storm surge could hit? Exposure is just that. It's the people, the buildings, the infrastructure that are physically in a place where a hazard could strike. And here's the final, crucial piece of the puzzle: vulnerability. This is all about the underlying conditions that can take a bad situation and make it so much worse. Are the buildings in a city built to fall apart? Do people not have the money or resources to get out of the way? Is there no early warning system? Vulnerability is the thing that can turn a serious problem into an absolute catastrophe. And here it is. This is how all those ingredients come together in a super simple but really powerful equation. Disaster risk equals hazard times exposure times vulnerability. Now, the fact that we're multiplying here is absolutely key. Why? Because if any one of those factors is zero, the whole risk becomes zero, right? A powerful hazard where nobody lives means no risk. And a community that's exposed but has zero vulnerability, well, they're going to be a whole lot safer. You see? This little formula, it changes everything. I mean, think about it. We can't stop an earthquake from happening, and we can't just wish away a cyclone. So this shows us exactly where we can and where we should be putting our effort. We can't get rid of the hazard, but we can absolutely work on reducing our exposure and, most importantly, our vulnerability. And that insight has caused a huge shift in how we think about disasters. For the longest time, the main approach was totally reactive. A disaster would hit, and then all the effort, all the money would pour into response and recovery, basically cleaning up the mess afterward. But the modern way of thinking, called disaster risk reduction, or DRR for short, is proactive. It's all about what we do before an event to mitigate the damage and be prepared. So what is this DRR thing exactly? Well, as you can see here, it's a systematic approach. It's the official goal of actively trying to lower the numbers in that risk equation we just talked about. And it does that by managing the two things we can actually control: our exposure and our vulnerability. Okay, but how does this actually work on the ground? How do we reduce vulnerability in a real, tangible way? The answer is all about building something called capacity. And you can think of capacity as the direct opposite of vulnerability. Yeah, capacity is basically the other side of the coin from vulnerability. It's all the strengths, all the resources, and all the skills that a community has to manage its own risks. So capacity building is the process of making those things stronger, of empowering people and communities so they can protect themselves. And this isn't just some high-level theory, okay? Look at these really practical examples. In Togo, the Red Cross holds first aid training at night, specifically so people who work during the day can actually go. Or in Bangladesh, residents get trained in how to secure their own shelters before a cyclone hits. These are real, concrete actions that give communities the power to save lives. But of course, it's not always simple. There are challenges. The source material points out this critical gap that it calls the missing middle. What that means is we see a lot of attention on big national level policies and on these hyper-local community projects, but there's often way less support for that level in between, state or provincial governments. And that's a huge problem because they're the ones who have to turn national plans into local action. They are a crucial link, and they're often totally overlooked.
So keeping those challenges in mind, what does it actually take to build this capacity the right way? Well, research has pretty much laid out 6 key principles that are found in all the successful programs.
This here is basically our roadmap. It shows that the best programs aren't one size fits all. They start with being flexible and adaptable. 1. From there, it's about planning for the long haul. 2. And making sure the local community has a sense of ownership. 3. So they're really invested. It also means developing real practical skills or functional capacity. 4. And then integrating everyone who's involved, from the top down. 5. And when you get all those pieces working together, they make a real, measurable contribution to reducing disaster risk. 6. So let's bring all this back home. We started by questioning whether disasters are natural, then we unpacked that whole formula for risk, and we looked at the proactive ways we can reduce it. So after all that, what's the single most important thing to take away? Here's the bottom line. Disasters are not inevitable. They are not these random acts of nature that we're powerless against. They are the predictable outcome of a hazard hitting a place where people are exposed and vulnerable. And you know what that means? It means risk is manageable. It's something we can actively do something about. By focusing on reducing vulnerability and building capacity, we literally have the power to change the outcome. And that leaves us with one last big question. A question for you. I want you to think about your own town, your own neighborhood. Think about the local hazards, who and what is exposed, and what are the underlying vulnerabilities. Taking all that into account, how resilient is your community?